It'd take a little bit.
There you go.
Hi, my name is Rory Canterbury. I'm a host today on Archery Talk 101, and we have Dale on the line with us. We're going to talk to him about archery and what's going on in his world, and we'll just kind of see where it goes from there. For those listening, you can listen to this on Spotify, catch up what's going on there. You can also watch the podcast in the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group, as well as on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix It Yourself. So with that out of the way, how's it going, Dale? Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, could you introduce yourself and then tell us a little something about you?
I'm Dale Jones from Western PA. Shoot a lot of tournament archery, hunt as much as humanly time allows, and just have shot archery for since I was probably 12 years old, and that's pretty much what my daily routine has some sort of archery activity involved in it almost every day, whether it be setting up bows, getting equipment, shooting bows, hunting, or just testing, setting up new bows. Always trying to shoot better, and hopefully it's not always just me, that if there is a new sweet spot in that bow somewhere, that helps me out. And so yeah, just archery every day almost in some fashion.
Yeah. So what got you started in archery?
Well, obviously my dad always took us hunting, rifle hunting, duck hunting, deer and ducks. We did a little turkey hunting. And we ran into a friend of my dad's one day up on a lake fishing, and all he could talk about was archery hunting. And as 12 10 or 11, 12-year old, I was just listening to the adults talk, and of course they're talking about hunting, so that's good. And he told my dad how you should get your son get into archery hunting. And so of course I got that idea in my head, and I pestered my dad and about this bow, getting a bow and set up. And of course, bows aren't free, and at the
No.
time, it was just took a little while, but he did get me a bow, and I never set it down. I actually wore it out. It was an old Hoyt Game Getter 2, probably back in 91 or 92 ish times. And like I said, I literally wore that bow out where it broke. So that was just shooting in the backyard. Took it hunting a little bit. I didn't know how to archery hunt. My dad didn't really bow hunt. He did a little recurve spot and stock stuff back in his day. Took a shot at a deer or two. I was just would walk around the woods and find it. How sometimes you're walking and a doe or something will see you and they'll just stay there and watch. And I had no idea how far they were. Took a shot, never got one. Like I said, I wore that bow out, and then some friends of my dad's took me bow hunting or took me to a bow shoot, and just finally was kind of a self-taught bow hunter, other than reading old articles, Chuck Adams articles, Fred Eichler type stuff over the years, and just became that was my passion. My calling in life was to bow hunt.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting start. You get into the hunting, and next thing you know, you pick up archery, and then you just stay with it. And so
Right.
do you hunt with guns at all anymore, or just archery?
If if I have to, I take a
Oh,
gun with me, but I'll go in gun season. I kind of consider gun season the time I take, like, my kids, which they're all older, they're 24 and 21, but I would always kind of dedicate that time, like the first day or two, to them. So if they wanted to go, I would just go with them and help them along. And truthfully, most years I don't have to take a gun, which is nice. We usually end up getting something in archery season, but not always. Last year was a trying year. I actually carried a rifle for a couple days there. But yes, I'm not against taking a rifle gun out gun hunting. I used to bow hunt in gun season a lot, just to try to prove a point, and that never really worked out much, because of the spots I want to hunt in gun season are into the tight to the houses where the deer go and hide. And even though you have a gun, people see that orange, and I just try to keep the attention away from myself. So I stayed out of those spots in gun season, because we have to wear, obviously we wear orange in PA, and even if you're bow hunting, you still have to wear orange. So
now if
instead
it's
of
just archery season, do you have to wear the orange then, or?
they changed, we just looked at those rules yesterday, because inline deer, doe, and inline doe, and then bear archery bear came in yesterday. And then we have a youth and senior rifle season Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for doe only. And I was checking to see because they change the rules in PA every year. I think that's their way to maybe catch you.
Yeah.
So they change it. You do not, archery does not have to wear orange while archery hunting this year at all, the way I read it. But that could be wrong. So I don't think we do. But if you're carrying the gun, you do have to wear orange.
Yeah, it's kind of like that here in Nebraska during archery season. You don't need orange. And during the firearm season, if you are trying, you have to have orange on. Of course, it
Yeah,
wouldn't be safe not to. But the weird part is muzzle loaders. If you're carrying a muzzle loader, you have to have orange, but it goes in the same time as archery. But you don't need to wear
right.
orange if you're archery hunting. It's
Yeah,
yeah,
you're protecting the man with the individual with the weapon who's really the one shooting at something. Yeah, it
yeah.
doesn't make a lot of sense, but
But muzzle loaders normally don't have that long of a range anyway. But still, if you're in
yeah,
it, if you're all camoed up, they can't see you.
right.
Um, the deer can't see you, they can't see you.
No,
That's kind of one of those kind of weird things. But I don't think around where I hunt there's too many muzzleloaders that are out there hunting anyway. It's not an area that's
no. We
covered with a
luckily
lot of muzzleloaders.
we hunt private property, so we know who's in there or who should be in there, and typically none of them are gun hunting anyways.
Yeah. Out of the two properties I have, we're the only ones hunting in there. So, and it
Right,
don't hold a lot of deer anyway. So, the one property they come through basically at night. So there's not a lot of deer moving around.
right.
So you say on some of your hunts, tell us about the hunt where you first got your first archery deer.
It was a little spot just down over the hill from my mom and dad's house where we had just moved in like a year or two prior. There's a little apple orchard, and it was just blossoming. It was always good apple trees. And I had no idea what I was doing. A friend of mine, an older kid in high school, we were pretty good friends, and he had lived his life bow hunting. So he showed me this little spot, which was nice. And I got a climbing tree stand that I almost fell out of a couple times learning how to use it. It was an old TSS intruder with no seat, no or just the platform. We would use it. I would use a cinch strap to, climb the tree to pull myself up. And I didn't even have a seat. I had a bucket and my bow tied to a rope. When I pulled it up, I had the bucket to sit on, which gave you zero room on the platform practically. And
Right.
they weren't very big. So I was sitting there one evening overlooking the apple trees, and a little doe come in, and I got her. First deer I ever shot, just happy as can be. She died within 10 yards, so I'm sitting there watching her, and up walks an 8 point, which wasn't big, but it was a nice, 2.5-year-old buck, and sits there and sniffs her for 10 minutes. And I've
Eh,
already filled, because in Pennsylvania, used to get a tag on you still get a tag on your license, which is essentially your buck tag in gun season. But back then, that could be your archery deer tag. So if you could tag a buck or a doe with it. But once that tag was filled, you could not shoot a buck anymore. And that had to be your first archery kill, was that tag. So I'm sitting there with my doe, my tag filled, and then up stand there's a bucket like 15 yards sniffing my doe that I just shot. So little did I learn, that was a lesson for later in life to in certain times of the year, if you're actually after a buck, to never shoot the first doe that walks through, because you never know what's following her.
Right. Well, and that's a decision you have to make. Is like, okay, do I take this, which is, not guaranteed because still got to make the shot. But if I take this,
Sure.
I fill my tag, but yet there might be something nicer going. But if you wait,
Right.
they may never show up. So you're not
That's
getting
right.
anything. So you have
Right.
to make that decision.
Yeah, now I could have shot that buck as well, because we have separated. That's a buck tag or a doe tag. Doesn't matter if you kill it archery or gun. It's just they're separate. But back then, that's how it used to be. But
Yeah,
either way, I was happy I killed my first archery deer that night.
well, that was an accomplishment right there. I know, and you take a new hunter out, whether it be rifle or archery. You tell us
Uh-huh.
like, the first deer, go ahead and take the first deer. If it's a
Right.
fawn, then shoot it. Then
Yeah.
after that, let's talk about letting the fawns walk. But when I first
Right.
started out, like I couldn't tell whether it was an adult or a fawn. I had no way of
Right.
knowing.
Yeah.
And
Exactly. You don't know yet.
and then one of the hunting shows actually made a mistake and taught something. Normally they just brag about how well, they're shooting and bragging about their bucks that they're shooting. And the one come out and said, tell if it's an adult or a fawn. You look at the nose to the back of the head, where's the eyes?
Yeah.
If it's halfway back, it's a fawn. If it's further than halfway back, it's an adult. It's like,
Right.
oh, now I can tell if it's a fawn or not. Because you can't tell.
Exactly.
You're not, you haven't shot that many deer to look at it, and you can't really tell, and until you learn something simple like that. It's like, I said, well, it's the size. Like, I can't tell a small one from the big one. I haven't seen that many. When you first start
Exactly.
out, you're lucky to see prints in the dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I started out. If I seen prints, it was a good day.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, I didn't have to see the deer. I just had to see that. Oh, there had been one come by here at one time.
Yeah. They're actually here. I have a chance.
Yeah. So what's been your probably your most challenging hunt you've been on?
Elk, all
Oh,
five of them.
all five of them.
I'm still eating soup on this one, but I've been a friend a good friend of mine has. I went out on my own with my brother and some other friends. We backpacked up in the mountains and gave her all we had, and we saw elk, but we didn't kill any. And then I took my oldest son out one time, and I only bought his tag because one, they're expensive, and two, I haven't killed one elk, let alone try to kill two in the same season. And
Yeah,
just so then we ended up with a friend of mine who's being very successful in that area, and he's a very good hunter, and he's killed, I think, 7 out of 8 years or 8 out of 9 years he's killed an elk out there from home here. So he's just the Easterner too, but he's a very accomplished hunter. And then another, I took my other son out, and he was a youth, so we both bought tags and we backpacked hunted a little bit, and then that hunt ended up a little short due to an injury, but we did not get an elk then. And then I've just been going out directly with the friend of mine to his spot, and we spread out, and just we have different spots that we hunt. And I've come very close the last 2 years, and actually the last here goes, the typical last hour of the last day of the hunt. I
yeah,
had a nice 500, 5 by 5, just under 300-inch bull coming in, and he just wouldn't come off the private property, and I just literally ran out of daylight. But we hunted that bull and a whole herd of cows in the morning, chased them into the willows on private land, and we just waited out the day. I went back to our cabin and then came back early, and because it's public land. The day before that, I did not get that spot because there was a side by side there before I came. So I went out there really early, waited 7 hours in the sun until the sun started to go down and they started to get up out of the willows, and it almost worked out. But fooling all those cows and all those eyes and noses, and like I said, it was close, but it didn't happen. So maybe next year.
yeah. Well, it made for a good story though.
Oh yeah, it's definitely been a lot of stories with those many hunts, and I know I've helped carry a lot of elk out with my friends, getting their elk and stuff. So it's fun just to be part of the hunt and successful hunt, and if people say when you get a bull down, that's when the work starts, then I love working because I think it's great.
Yeah, yeah. That's because that's a lot of work. That's a big animal, and especially if there's
Yeah,
only a couple of you.
right.
Because you have to make probably more than one trip because that's a lot of meat to carry out. And
There's usually about 4 or 5 of us, so we get it out in one trip. And luckily, we're not 3 miles, 5 miles in the back country. We're like a mile and a half off the trailhead or something. It's not bad, but it's fun either way. I mean, we had an animal come after us the one night in the willows. We don't know what it was, but it was not afraid of us. And then we've seen a few mountain lions just to keep it interesting here and there from time to time.
yeah, you're carrying their meal.
Exactly. Well, we weren't
It-
giving it up.
no, that's why you always be aware of what's going on around you because you never
Yeah,
know.
exactly. Right. But definitely elk and hunting out of state is pretty challenging. So that's been definitely my most challenging hunting wise is elk.
So when you hunt out of state, where do you go?
We go to Colorado because it's over the counter, but now that has changed next year. Everything will be a draw archery, I guess. There might be some over the counter rifle tags, but we go out in archery the first week because they're hunting, we're hunting them undisturbed over water and food. And so I think we might be able to put in for that unit next year and just draw with no points. Some of the one fella has points, but I don't. Um, we'll see. I hope we can get that tag again, and it's not too hard to get.
Yeah, that's kind of nice if you can get the tags, but when they go in for a draw, you never know if
Yeah,
you're going to get the tags, and then it's kind of hard to plan if you don't know it far enough in
right.
advance.
We've been saving Wyoming points too, so we may cash those in. We have quite a few Wyoming points to. We're going to decide whether to burn those next year or not. But Wyoming's a pretty good state, so I've been told. I've obviously never hunted it, but kind of excited when we do get that tag.
What are you going to hunt in Wyoming when you get them?
That's exactly the part we don't know. We have to see what units are available for the points that we have. We'll have 8 points. So I don't know. That's where I do a lot of phone calls and start
Yeah.
talking and asking for advice.
So,
Luckily, in this community, I have a lot of contacts, so it'll be helpful.
yeah. So, how is it that you get the points?
We just go online and buy the $50 points every year.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
you just go buy points and save them up until you get to either a unit you want to try to draw, or I think every other year maybe 2 points is what a general tag draw takes. It's actually very confusing. I've never had to do it yet, but I think I'll pay my Go Hunt membership when that time comes and let them help me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when you're hunting a place you never hunted, trying to track them down is interesting because you don't know their patterns. And
Right. Just like we have elk here in PA, and I have 22 points, and I still never drawn. But I put it in for a bull in a specific unit now because I'm not going to waste those points on a cow. And they have
right.
some very large bulls in Pennsylvania, which I've gone out to see them. They're only an hour and a half from my house, but I've not drawn a tag yet. So, and I may never draw one. There's such a small amount of tags to give out here, and I think there's around 20 to 30,000 applicants every year.
Yeah. That's the bad part when you're in a real high populated area and there's limited tags.
Yeah. And I think they had saved one or two of those tags for non-resident just to stay in the good status quo. I think of like the record book, people have to give so many non-resident tags away, I believe is how that goes.
Well, and then those always sell for a lot higher dollar value too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they auction or raffle off one tag in PA, but I don't, obviously that's going to be out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah. Yeah. Most of us don't have the money to spend on, high
Yeah.
dollar tags actually to
Yeah.
make sure you get it. And
Right. Those governor tags or something.
yeah. Well, we just gotta hunt what we can and when we can and
It'll
make it.
be I'll draw one the year I draw a good tag out west and then have to decide which one I want to go on.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be it. You'd get two tags that overflick on the same time zone and
Yeah.
time period. So you got to pick one or the other. And
Burn my whole year's vacation in 1 month.
yeah, well, that'd be a way of doing it, though.
That's definitely, I'll definitely do that if I had to.
Yeah. So we talked about kind of challenging hunts. What's been your most memorable hunt?
Uh, Definitely be the one with my dad. First deer I ever shot when I was 12. We're just sitting on a hillside. Archery really hasn't taken off a whole lot at that point, so where I wasn't getting deer. And we're sitting there the first day. Our gun season always came in on a Monday, and we're sitting on the hillside. And of course, he wants me to shoot the first deer, legal buck that comes through. And buck and doe didn't run together at that time, so you could only shoot bucks anyway. So you're seeing doe all day, or seeing lots of deer. You just wish you could. He's like, well, pull up and find it in the scope. Learn how to. That's people's half the problems. They can't find the animal in the scope. When they see it. So we would just always practice that on does or whatever when they come through. And he saw a deer down over the hill, and he's on one side of the tree, I'm on the other, and he has a clear view of it. He said it's a 7 point, it's a legal buck, which at that point a spike was a legal buck, or a fork horn or whatever. We didn't have point restrictions and things. And I said, Dad, I can't see it. I can't see it. And it's not going anywhere. It's just feeding. And, he's like, shoot it. I can't see it. I said, you shoot it and I'll get the next one. Well, he didn't want to do that. So we're sitting there for like, I don't know how long watching this thing. And I said, just shoot it. So he shot it and he's all upset now because it dropped right there, but he wanted me to shoot it. And I'm like, don't worry, we'll get another one. I'm 12 years old and I'm just happy that once again, you're in on a hunt where something was got. So he's
Yeah.
all upset that, and that he wanted me to shoot it and he's sorry, he's apologizing and it's okay. We'll get another one. It's only like 10 o'clock. So we go back up, we got his deer and set it there and lay it, get it all cooled off and let it out so it'll start cooling because we didn't want to drag it out yet. It was a little bit of a walk.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and you're sitting on a root. You might have one of them old bean bags, that you would set on, but yet it's
Yeah.
plastic. So you would slide down the hill like a sled, like you're sled riding in the snow. And I said, oh, my butt hurts. He said, well, stand up and just sit there, but don't move, I'm standing there, rubbing my butt because I've been sitting since it's like 1 o'clock now and been sitting all day. And I said, I hear something. And we're sitting right on the edge of a point. And it's like 30 yards is all you can see to the left. But down the hill, you can see this point really good, which was a good spot where they came from. And I'm standing there with his 30-30 because mine only held 5 shells. His held 7. So he gave me his gun to hold, to use. And this buck walks right around the point at 30 yards and stands there and stands broadside and turns his head and looks at me like, well, are you going to shoot me or not? So I'm 12 years old, shaking like a leaf. I shot it offhand. It slid down the hill and died in his gut pile. It died in the gut pile. It slid down to the gut pile that his buck died at. So we both got bucks that day. Mine was a 6 point, his was a 7 point, and he cut the horns off and mounted them on the same plaque. So that was definitely my first successful hunt and the most memorable.
Yeah, that was pretty good when he wanted you to take the first one and he ended up taking it and you
Yeah,
still got yours from even
yeah,
a better advantage, a more cool way to get it.
yeah. It was a long drag because I was a fat little 12-year-old and couldn't hardly carry the guns out. And he would have to drag his, come back to get mine, drag mine up to his. So it took him a little while to get both them deer out.
Yeah.
I couldn't drag them. I couldn't help. So I just carried all the stuff.
Well, that's good. I know when I go when the kids were young and I go camping, I did almost all the work. They didn't really. It's like, okay, get in the truck.
Yeah, exactly. And my kids were smart about it. They would go in archery season. They wanted to go hunting, but I'm like, are you guys going to go out tonight or not? No, I'll go out later. I'll go out later. So they start finally. I said, hey, it's getting good in season. When are you going to start hunting? They're like, are you seeing many deer? I said, no, not yet. I'll let me know when you start seeing them. Then I'll go hunt. So I was like their personal guide, of course. So you do whatever the kids ask. You know what I mean? Whatever it takes to get them out there. And then they would set 1 or 2 nights and end up killing a little buck or something, which makes it all worth it.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of nice when you get out there and take them out and get them going and see some of the stuff they do and let them take shots when when you can get them in a position. And I know
Right.
one time we was out and it was supposed to stop raining. It was a light rain, nothing really big or anything. And we decided it's like, it's like 9 o'clock and it still hasn't started. It's still kind of misty, rainy out. And so we started walking out. My son's walking in with us, and all of a sudden, here's this doe standing, um, about 30 yards away and looking at us. So I told him, it's like, okay, get ready behind me and then step out alongside of me and then take the shot. But by the time he got ready, it had decided to walk off. But,
Right.
it was sitting there looking at me and not paying attention to him because he was behind me.
Right.
So as I stood there, it just looked at me and you know, it's I was just kind of the distracting point. So
Well,
he came
that's what
over.
my brother and I had the same deal one time. He was helping me drag I shot a nice big 820, ran down into this hole in the world, and it was just miserable to get him out. So we get to the crest of the hill, and we sit there and stop. And my brother was smart enough to bring his bow with him, we're sitting there dragging this buck up the hill, and it was, deep into the rut, like November 6th or 7th. And I'm sure he's all stinky. And we're sitting there talking to each other, and he says, "Don't move. There's a buck behind you." I'm like, "Well, use me as a blind and get your bow ready." Well, sometime when these things will smell these other deer and come in to investigate it. And this thing walked within 15 yards of us, but it was just a younger, 2-year old or whatever. He didn't want to shoot it, but it just shows you that good thing he brought his bow with him, because when that buck smelled that other one, he wanted to come over and investigate it. And if it would have been a nice, deer that he wanted to shoot, he definitely could have had a wide open 15-yard shot at this thing. But that's how close it got, and it just stood there and stared at us, not really knowing what was going on, because that deer was laying there on the ground, but he stunk, so he knew he had that smell. But so like you said, you just use you as a distraction, and
You're right.
he definitely could have pulled that shot off.
Yeah, that's kind of you never know what they're going to do.
No,
That's the thing. It's like there's all kinds of different stories and stuff going on that you hear and see, and then when they happen to you, that's kind of even more cool.
right. Yeah, for sure. Especially when your family's with you, or your kids, or your brother, or your mom or dad, or whoever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I know one time with my other son, I put a tree stand next to mine had a ladder stand. I stuck a tree stand in another branch over there, and he was all cameled up, and you couldn't see him. And I said, here's the call. You play with it,
Uh-huh.
and it's there's something's coming in and it's doing what we want, and then just don't make any sound. And I
Right.
just let him call whenever he wanted to, and the deer are going to hear it if they're within range. There's
Right.
only one or three things you can do: ignore it, come to it, or run away.
Yeah.
It,
It's a 50
whether
50.
yeah, whether he's using it or I'm using it really doesn't matter. That way, I can be ready with my bow.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's always kind of nice when you have your kids with you and you're hunting. Little stories, and that's
Yeah.
always the cool part when you have them with you and see what's going
And
on.
when they're gun hunting, it kind of like you have a little more control in the situation. There's a little more you can throw in, like your hand to help them and whatever. But I remember my youngest, well, even both my boys, but the youngest one in particular, I don't remember why, but when this buck popped in, it was within 10 yards. And, there was like, it was in a thicket, and it was just gone. He wasn't there, and then he was. And I think Connor was probably 10 or 11. And, he looks over, and that deer, luckily it came in on his left side. He's right handed, so not a lot of movement. But I had no way to help him. So he was all on his own, and, he pulled it off, and he perfectly shot the deer, right. And it walked over, we watched it go down, but you have zero control over helping them at that time in
Right.
archery. In archery, you have no, and this wasn't a crossbow, and it was, vertical bow, compound, all him. And, you taught him right, I guess. And, they're pretty cool under pressure. So I just was like, please do this the way I showed you. But he did perfect, and he got the deer, and it went maybe 30 yards, and it was a nice 2.5-year-old deer. And we actually got it mounted for him. It was a bigger one.
Oh,
But
that's
the whole
good.
story going, and then of course I'm like jumping all over the place, excited as can be, and I grabbed the hold of him, and he like threw him off balance a little bit, but I grabbed him by his tether strap just to shake him, a little bit, that because we were excited. And I said, "That's why you wear a safety harness, so Dad doesn't throw you out of the tree."
Yeah. Yeah, it's like being in a tree stand is you definitely got to have them safety harnesses on. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, I've got coming up. I haven't put it all together yet, but I did an interview with Nebraska's Game and Parks and their tree stand safety guys. They're teaching that, and there's a whole lot of information that I learned about tree stand safety. And uh, kind of the biggest part of it is, even though the safety harness saves your life, it's going
Uh-huh.
to kill you.
Yep.
So you got to have a plan to recover from the fall.
You
You
do.
may
Yeah.
only fall a little bit, but it cuts. Basically, in just what it cuts off the circulation in your legs because you can't relieve the pressure, and
Right.
then it builds up an acid. I forget what kind of it is, and then once you
Sure.
get relief on it, all that acid runs through, and you end up with a heart attack.
Right.
You'll die. So um, we went through a whole bunch of stuff here, and once I get it all put together, I'm a little behind on getting it put together. I'll get it out and we can take a look at it and I'll have that video. I'll put it out as a podcast as well, so we
Hmm.
can listen to it and watch it, whether you're in the my YouTube channel or whatever. And I'll also put my YouTube channel. I have just a video of it as well, and then I'll be sending it to Gaming Parks too. And they can use it. However when I record something on them, if the person I'm talking to wants to copy the video, I give it to them, so they can
Right.
use it however they want. If you do a business, hey, they can use it however they want because I'm promoting their business as
Sure.
well as they're promoting, my podcast. And, it's just, if anybody has a business, promote it, let's talk about it,
Exactly.
something you do, whether it's archery related or not. I
Yeah.
don't care on that. Let's get as much information out as we can. And so, if you're listening to this or watching this, make sure you watch for that to come out. And, oh man, there's all kinds of stuff that I'd like to try some of those techniques, but right now I'm not able to. But
Yeah. Well, I always taught them to set their tether so if they fall out of their stand, they don't fall below the platform. So you can just kind of scooch over and sit on it, or set your tether so it'll pull you to the side where maybe your ladder is or something, so you can get a hold
right,
of something. And I always made them not fall out of the tree, but like just know what it feels like to be hanging there, and they're maybe like 8 feet off the ground. We would set it up to where they would hang, and just to feel what it's like to be in that harness and in that situation too. So it's not that you're not scared. You're going to be scared, but of course you're going to have maybe a little bit of whereabouts because I've done this before.
right. Well, and I always set mine so as I'm sitting down on my wherever my platform is that I sit on, it actually pulls up on me
You
slightly.
can start to feel it. Yep. I think some people
Yeah,
set them way too loose, and they're going to fall. They're going to fall below their platform or something to where they can't get a hold of their ladder or
right.
something. And you got to shorten that tether up a little bit.
Well, one of the stories that they told was this guy was in a ladder stand and all strapped in, and two bucks come in and started fighting, knocked the ladder stand down.
Oh, wow.
So now he's hanging there,
Yeah.
no ladder stand. So now you got to figure out how to get down because there's no
Sure.
pegs that you can get on because ladder stand, you just
You're in a
climb up
ladder
the
stand.
ladder.
Yeah. Right.
So, that's where the lineman's line with the Persix knot on it,
Yep.
you use that to climb down. He showed a little technique on how to use that to actually climb down because as you put pressure on it, you got to relieve the pressure.
Yeah.
The best
Yeah.
I've
I
done
use
so
that lifeline. Yeah. With the Prusik knot.
yeah, you tie a bunch of just slip knots as close as you can together because they're about 6 inches around, and you stand up on the one, and you put pressure on it, stand up, and you lower the knot, and then when you step down to the next knot, it's gonna undo that one slip knot, and now
Right.
then you stand up on that and slide it down, and you go down to 6 inches at a time till you get down to the bottom,
Right.
and then the other thing you use is had another lineman's line that you had around him, and with the Persix knot you can adjust it, so now you can use both feet to stand. Because a lot of the new
Okay.
harnesses have that little bitty strap with that
Yep.
little loop in it.
Yeah.
Well, how are you going to get your foot in there very
Yeah.
easy because it's there, but that big, lineman's line, you can stick down, you stand up on both feet, and
Right.
and now you can relieve the pressure on it, and now you have, um, you can relieve that pressure and then work down the other knot and come down and
Sure.
so that's why it's important to have one of those hooked onto your tree. And
Sure.
they're not very expensive, but
No, because I had a cable break on one of my platforms years ago, and that was a little bit scary.
yeah,
It wasn't even that old of a stand. And then I look back, I won't mention any names, but that was one of the problems the company had, and they kind of went out of business. Is the wire, the rubber coating was allowing water to get down in, and you couldn't see that the wires were getting bad. And they said it wasn't a very old stand, but the platform, it did rust through, and the platform cut loose. Luckily, the one other one held. So time to
yeah,
get out of the tree. Time to get rid of
yeah,
that stand.
yeah. Well, and there's a lot of things that you got to pay attention to, and one of the things that they brought up, which I'll go over this a little bit more when I do that one, was I think it was like 82% of all accidents are tree stand accidents, and he said I think it was like 80% of those are homemade tree stands.
Yeah. Yeah. Let the pros build them.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things, you build the wooden ones, you nail the plank to the thing, and you're climbing up, and the boards rot, or the nails rot.
Yep.
And I had one, I was taking a stand out, I'd been up there for a few years, and I go to unscrew the peg, and it just broke off.
Yeah.
It had been in there long enough, it had rotted in, it had rusted through the peg. And, that's why you always want 3 points of contact.
Yeah. And then I look back at what I climbed, and my dad and my uncles all built tree stands. It's a wonder we're all alive.
Yeah.
The two walking in with a pile of 2x4s and some nails. We're going to put up a tree stand.
Yeah. Yeah, it works okay, but if after a couple years, the
Hmm.
boards will rot,
Yeah.
because
The tree grows and yeah, nails pull, and
yeah,
it wasn't good. We were the wonder we're still alive.
yeah. Well, and I've seen some tree stands where the pegs are actually climbing up underneath the tree stand. You got to
Yeah.
hang on it, and the pegs are underneath it. It needs to be, climb at the side and always put pegs higher so you step down to your tree stand. And there's
Yeah,
a whole bunch of
exactly.
stuff I'll get into when I get that one put together. But yeah, I just want to let everybody know it's like, hey, there's, even though if you're elevated, you got to know how to recover from hanging off the
Yeah,
harness.
exactly. Some places, most places, you probably don't have cell service to call, or hey, I need help,
No,
or if you probably maybe if you have a phone, you might drop it, or you got to rely on yourself.
well, and then too, you always your hunting pants always have that side pocket on your side of your leg.
Uh-huh.
That's where you want to put your phone.
Right.
Not in your chest pocket, not in your back pocket or any other pockets like that, because you can't get to them when you're hanging on the harness.
Exactly.
So you want to have all those side pockets or what your emergency air, supplies need to be going those. Because if
Yep.
you're hanging on a tree stand, you need to know, or hanging off a harness, you need to, this is what you're going to need, and think about
Yeah.
what
And
you
I
put where.
I always tell my wife where I'm going, and if she doesn't know the stand, my brother knows where every one of my stands are, so she can say, "Hey, Dale didn't come back yet, but he said he's going to this stand." He knows right where I'm at.
Yeah, that's the thing is always have somebody know where you're at.
Yep.
So anyway, you also do target archery, right?
A little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So
I actually
tell
haven't
us about that.
stopped. That was another thing when my dad's friend, what got me, one of his other friends that got me into archery. He took me to we called it bow hunter weekend. It was always a month, in September, local shoot. They set up 40 targets, and he wanted me to go. And I said, well, I can't go. I don't have 40 arrows, because I didn't know, I have to shoot 40
Oh,
shots. Well, I don't have 40 arrows. Well, no, you walk up and shoot, and then you pull them, and I'm like, oh, I was never been to a shoot before, ever. I only shot in my backyard. So I went to that, and like once again, you bite the worm and swallow the hook, and you take off from there. And
yeah.
shot all the local stuff and did well. Of course, I was in the youth class, so I won everything doing that. Every weekend we would go to a shoot or two. Sometimes we could go one, two on Sunday if we did it right, and they were close enough together. So a couple guys from our archery club wanted to go to this IBO tournament, and I didn't know anything about that. That was in '93. So they're like, you should go with us. They have a youth class. I'm like, oh, well, I win everything in the youth around here. But I was shooting an old Hoyt Pro Force Extreme at 90 pounds. Like, but you can't shoot your bow. I'm like, well, whose bow am I going to shoot? Well, you need a new one, because youth class could only shoot 60 pounds. So I had an indoor dot bow, an old Pro Vantage medalist with the old Hoyts with the wooden limbs and the 50% E wheels. And that was a 60 pounder. So I had to use that bow, which was dog dirt slow. I don't know, it was like probably 250 or 260 feet a second. Well, they took me to that. I did good, but I obviously didn't win because I was so handicapped with speed. But I learned how to judge yardage shooting that bow over the next year or two.
Yeah.
Um, Shot all the IBO Triple Crown shoots, and then finally went to the World Shoot. I think the next year, my parents took me and my brother to the IBO World Shoot in Shelbyville, Illinois, which I think I was still in the youth class. Then I bought the Super Slam Supreme or Fast Flight or something. It was that goofy handled thing that Hoyt came out with in the late '90s. It was actually a horrible design, but it looked like a good idea at the time. And I just shot all the IBOs for probably the next 3 or 4 years, and then I started doing well. I won the IBO Worlds when I was 19 in the MBO class, which was, if anybody knows, it's the men's open division amateur class. I won that down in Flatwoods, West Virginia. There was 800 guys in that class. That's when IBO was really big. Um, Won a stupid amount of money for amateur tournaments and archery, and um, it was like I said, it was a weekend with my dad. He went with me, and we spent the whole weekend. It was crazy hot, and it was miserable temperatures, but it was working out good in the archery, at the tournament. And I ended up getting in the shoot off the next, the top 5 scores go to the shoot off, and there was 9 of us that shot off in the MBO class that weekend, and I won that in a 1 arrow shoot off. At the end, there was a 3-way tie at the end, and closest to the center of they put an orange dot in the middle of the target, and I know I had a 10. It wasn't a great 10, but the other 2 guys were 8s. So guess what? Then you win.
Yeah.
So that was the start of it all, which I had been shooting, IBO since then. But then in probably 97, I started doing ASAs also. And Hoyt had picked me up, put me on pro staff. Um, ASA was a little different at first, had a speed limit, and then shooting lower 12s. But I've done that ever since 97. I started shooting ASA and IBO, but I've been shooting tournament archery since 93 with a handful of wins, 1 or 2 major dot tournament wins in the open class or pro classes. So I've just been doing that ever since, traveling. My wife puts up with all this stuff, thank goodness. She's my biggest supporter because you need a lot of it, because there's a lot of downs and outs and punch to the
Right.
guts. Shoot a good score, but I had 2 5s this weekend. That's my typical story. I had a good tournament, but I missed by this many points. Well, those 2 5s, kind of hurt. And sorry, the dogs are barking.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, I've just been eat up with tournament archery, 3D and dots. Just 3D takes over the dot world. When I shoot 1 or 2 dot tournaments right now a year, but it just gets in the way of 3D. So that's my primary competition realm is the 3D world.
well, and I like the 3Ds because then it helps you judging yardage for when you're out hunting.
Right.
And I use the spots for developing my skill to, hit the spot I'm aiming at. So I
Uh-huh.
don't really, I've been to one spot tournament. I wasn't too enthused about them. That's just
Right.
me because I'm more hunting. I'd prefer the 3Ds,
Oh, for
over
sure.
standing there on the 20-yard line and shooting at this
Yeah.
at spots. And um, I do a lot of those because that's develops your skills. But
Sure.
um, I prefer the 3Ds. And um, I used to go out in front of mine and we didn't care where we finished. We could finish last and next to last. The only thing that
Uh-huh.
mattered was who had to take the crap on the way home and who got to give it.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be different each week. One week I'd win,
Yeah.
I'd lose, and Randy'd win, and then taking your kids out and they first started out, they were shooting like a little 5-pound compound bow,
Right.
and if they hit the target, we counted it. As five
Right.
points. They didn't have to
Okay.
stick. If they hit it, they got at least 5 points. Because it
Right.
wouldn't stick. And it's like get it close as you need to so that you can hit it. And
Yeah.
so we didn't care. It's like, they're just out there having fun and
Yeah. My kids never took too much into target shooting. I mean, they had all the equipment they ever needed. They had a setup, and they just would hunt a lot. They wouldn't hunt. They wouldn't. They would go to a shoot with me maybe once a year. They would go with me, but they would only compete maybe once a year. Just once they got older, they wanted to do it a little bit, and they did well. My oldest son, he could go out and just practice for a week and maybe make the top 10 in the youth class in like IBO and everything. So he did really well. My other son was a little younger. Classes were so big, and the way they did I don't remember what Eagle or something. I don't remember how that all worked. My wife would usually go walk with them at those ones, but we have a group of guys that we travel with when our families don't go, that and we shoot around here locally a lot. It's kind of like being at a national event when I shoot with that group because we have a lot of guys in this area that travel at least to IBO tournaments and then some ASA tournament travelers too. But our little tight knit group is it's almost like a national shoot off every weekend when we're in that group. So it's good competition and it just keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, it's always nice if you shoot with somebody that's better than you are, then that way you have something to strive for. If you're
Right,
always winning all of them, then it's like what challenges that there's nothing to really push you in. And
right.
that's hard to try and push yourself. You can do it, it's like, okay, I want to get I need to get one score better, 1 point better, 1 point better, and
Yep.
we're going to do it. But it's much easier if you shoot a slide because then you can see, okay, they're beating me by 10, 15 points. What are they doing different than I'm doing? And then you can look at that, and a lot of times they'll help you. You know,
Oh, sure. Yeah,
yeah,
that's one thing about our group. If we can't figure something out or something's not working out, then we'll talk to each other and it's just like a group therapy session. I mean, that group that I'm talking about, we have many national and world titles in our little group there that we travel with. So we go away, we're all about winning. We have fun, but we're all about winning. That's the primary. That's why we go.
yeah. Well, you don't want to go there to lose, then why go?
No, I didn't come this far to get second place.
No. Your goal is first place, and if you don't make it, that's fine. It just your goal's got to be to you know do the best you can each week,
Right.
and though when you're really competing against yourself, you do better than last time.
Exactly.
And if you didn't, what is it that you need to change so that you can do it?
Yep. That's always, yeah, that's to say, it's always a chalkboard session on 18-hour or 16-hour drive home. Like, what are we going to change?
Yeah, yeah. There's always something, and don't be afraid of trying different techniques. Um,
Yep, for sure. That's what
there's
I've learned. The biggest thing is try something. If this isn't working, switch something up.
yeah. And now, if it's working, I probably wouldn't do much experimenting.
Nope, just
Uh,
keep grinding
but
at it.
yeah, yeah, keep going, and there might be something you can one little bitty little thing. And I know I was watching a video of a guy's giving him pointers, and I'm looking, and it's like this looks really good. So then I had to start looking a little closer. It's like, oh,
Uh-huh.
okay, one little tweak.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
sometimes it's all that is. When you get to a certain level too, it's you notice those little things, or it's not like just when you get somebody started shooting, you get them going and they shoot a little bit and then they learn things and you can tell them little, then you start baby step into getting them better, and we're doing that all the time. So we notice if we change one little thing, hey, that did work or that doesn't work, or you can put it
right.
back. It's why it is nice to have multiple setups too. That's your test bow, and you have your one. It's as good as you can get it right now, and then you have another one to fall on if you can, test things like, hey, that worked on that one. I'm going to go do that with my primary bow. But that's not a luxury everybody has. I understand that, but it
No,
is nice to have it if you do.
yeah, there's a lot of things you do. I know when I have my store, I put beginners in, as a PSC dealer, and I put them in like the Nova Bow package. Um, it was called multiple different things. Dan Fitzgerald sponsored it one time, and it's the exact
Mm-hmm.
same bow, and that bow come with a rest, a sight, a quiver. Sometimes it used to come with a stabilizer, and then they quit doing that. But one of the things I'd do is I'd take that bow and get all set up for him and put on the cheapest stabilizer I had, have him shoot it. And then I put on a little bit more expensive stabilizer and shoot it. And then put on the high dollar one and have him shoot it. Can you tell the difference? No, buy the cheap one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
100%.
if you can't tell the difference, then why spend the extra money? And that was always my
Right.
attitude on setting up bows. Like, if you can't tell the difference, don't worry about it. Don't spend the money. And now, I used to give PSC had a low end release. I think True Fire had their Patriot or whatever. It's like a $20 release back then. This is 20 years ago, but
Right.
I would put that in. I'd put my packages so nobody could price compare. You can't price compare against my bow packages, even though you can go
Uh-huh.
like Walmart and buy the exact same bow. but it wasn't set up. I give you 6 arrows with tips on it. I give you release. I put string silencers on there. And I also taught you, give you some shooting instruction.
Sure.
And, if you buy from someplace else, you bring it in, I'm charging $40 to set the rest in the site.
Exactly.
Fine. I'm also for setting the rest, but I can eyeball the site and get you really close.
Right.
The left and right is real easy. You just because when you set it up a center shot, you look down the string and the sight should be blocked by the string.
Right.
So that's gets you really close. Um, and the shooting instruction, I used to charge $100 an hour
Right.
for shooting instruction. This is 20 years ago.
Sure.
And
Wow.
I had one guy one time called me up and says, "You think I could, put on the rest and get it set up?" And I says, "Well, you can bolt it on, but getting it set up, if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to get it set up. Like
Yeah, it's not going to be
I
flash.
I charge you $40 to put it on, and then on
Right.
top of that, I'm going to give you shooting instruction with it." He
Right.
took the bow back and come in and bought it from me because right there it's the same. You basically buying for the same price because PSC fixed the price of their bows. If it
Yeah.
was a current year bow, this is the price you sell it for. So he bought it for the same price I could sell it for, but mine had other stuff with it. So it
Yep.
actually appeared to be cheaper. But by the time you figure $40 for setting it up, and if you want shooting instruction, another $100 an hour, which, shooting instruction normally was, you know, 15, 20 minutes. It's all
Sure.
it really took, once you get them set up. But setting it up is part of the $100 an hour. I'm going to set the bow up to fit you, and then
Yeah.
teach you. So we might be spending in a half hour. So you're going to spend $90 on top of that. And, my whole package was less than $90
Yeah.
cheaper than, by the time you added the arrows and everything in there.
Yeah. And it's better to learn off the get go, right, than trying to, ingrain
Right.
mistakes and then get rid of that muscle memory problem and do it the right way after you're taught.
Yeah. Well, I had one guy I taught, brand new archer, never shot a bow before, bought a bow. 2 weeks later, he comes in and shows me Robin Hood.
That's
I
worth
taught
it.
him good.
Makes it worth it. Exactly.
Yeah. And routinely, I do that a lot on, archers. I can generally improve pretty much any archers
Yeah.
grouping, even on recurves. There's a thing you can watch. I had in the group, I had a lady come in and, really not a good group. And so I said, well, take a picture, a video if you're doing it. Well, every release was different.
Right.
Slightly, one time you come out, one time you come back a little bit. Sometimes you just open up and go forward. You never did have a consistent release. You're
Right.
never going to get a consistent
Yeah. If you
grouping.
can't repeatable shot, then it's not going to be good.
And the same thing comes in for compounds.
Yep.
If you're not consistent with everything exactly the same, how you grip the bow, how you're holding it or not holding it, actually. And that's why I put
Hmm.
slings on them so you don't hang onto the bow. Now, the new bows, they're nice because they just kind of basically sit in your hand.
Yeah.
The older bows, they will actually jump forward.
Right.
If you don't have a sling, you will drop the bow.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, I always, I find out and, somebody's an archer and ask them if they're using a wrist strap. And they say, yeah. I was like, I'll give you first lesson free. Quit pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
And then if they say, huh? How'd you know I was doing this? Like, I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
Unless you've learned the correct way to do it, you're pulling the trigger. And the
Yeah.
basic concept behind that is aiming is a fine motor skill. You can't think about moving your finger without thinking about the finger. So while you're thinking about moving the finger, what'd you stop doing? You stopped aiming.
Hmm.
And pulling the trigger will cause target panic. You want to
Yeah.
eliminate target panic? Quit pulling the trigger. I know when I first learned it's like, well, how do you know where it's going to go? Then once I learned, it's like, oh, all I got to do is aim.
Yeah.
Everything else just automatic goes off, and you don't
It'll
even think
go.
about it.
Yep. You just got to do it right.
Yeah, and there's a lot that archery is a mental game for sure. You can get in somebody's head
Somebody's head.
and mess them up, and it's like somebody's going along. It's like, well, don't miss. Now, what are you thinking about doing?
Yeah.
Missing. So what are you going to do? You're going to miss because that's what you're thinking about.
Yeah, that's so you get in a group with somebody shooting really well, and you just keep telling, man, you're hammering it today. You're really pounding it. Don't let up now. And then all next thing you know, they shoot a five.
Yeah.
Now they got to thinking there. You got in their head, it's competition. It's all good, fun competition.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I always have a thing that when we're shooting in the unknown class, we're judging. So you break a shot and like, boy, that took a little longer to get there than it should have. Now everybody's thinking, maybe I should add two. Maybe I should add 3 yards. Next thing you know, they blow one out the top. Like, well, that worked. Don't listen to anybody
That
else
way.
but yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I just it's do that. And then those that allow you use rangefinders, you know, you never want to use a rangefinder until after you've played your shot.
Yeah.
If you're not going to turn your scorecard in, it doesn't really matter. But
Right.
always judge the yardage, make your shot, and if it's where you had it, don't worry about the rangefinder because you got it
Right.
right. If you're
Yeah.
off a little bit, then range is like, okay, I thought this was 23, but it was actually 25, or
Yeah.
something like that. So that's why I'm a little bit low.
Right.
Or you just or it's like rangefinder says, oh, okay, 23. You just made a bad shot. Yeah, how do you
Yeah.
know if you made a bad shot or if you're just off or you're actually off on distance? You don't know. You just gotta um, just figure it out. And
Well,
that's
I don't remember what tournament we were at, but I've been doing it for so long. And I was in the semi pro class, so I'm the old man shooting with all the younger guys. And the kid shot low and we talked about the target after. And he said, well, I shot it for 47, but I wasn't sure if it was 50 or 47. I said, well, then what you do in that game is you just put it for 50 in the bottom of the 10. You're not going to go out the bottom. If then you have 3 yards error high, you're still going to be a 10. So it's just something that he had never thought about because it was, a younger guy didn't have a lot of experience. So
right.
I guess that's where being the old man in the class, but you don't want to tell them too much of your secrets because you're still competing against them.
Right. Yeah. Afterwards, and then the next time he is like, okay, now he's beating you on him.
Yeah, I'm not telling him anything. He listens too good.
Yeah. Well, but then that makes you get better too.
Oh yeah,
If you get him better, then you have to get better, and it just kind of big cycle up.
yeah, exactly.
Then be a young kid, you always get in his head too.
Yeah, he doesn't know all the tricks, so next time he'll be the one that falls for the boy. That took a longer to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's like, oh man, good thing I pulled it high when I shot.
Yeah, exactly. Needed a few extra yards on that one.
Yeah, a lot of things you could do to mess with their heads, and I just never really got into playing those kind of games anyway. I just shot, you
Yeah,
know. I'm just out there to have fun and and shoot and get better. And last times Randy and I was out, and sometimes we'd talk about it, and it's like that's what we shoot it at, and just to kind of see what's going on. And he shot it for this and I shot it for that, and kind of look and see, okay, this was off there. But generally we just shot, and if I died better, I got to give him crap to the next target.
exactly. Yeah, right. A passage.
Right. And then if he shot better, he give me crap until the next target. And then
Yeah,
whoever had the best score got to give the crap on the way home.
that's right. Loser buys lunch.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun doing that, and then getting your kids out there, and it's a lot of fun. I need to
Yep.
get back. I didn't get back doing it again, but I'm still recovering from bypass I had about 6 months ago, and then they had to go back
Okay.
in about a month and a half after that to put plates in because it wasn't healing. And
Oh
so
wow.
yeah, I can't even pull my bow back yet.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
working on it. Definitely can't go out gun hunting.
Right. Yeah.
I could probably shoot a 22 because they don't really have any kick. I could
Sure.
probably shoot the AR because it doesn't really have much of a kick. But um, other than that, yeah, no
Yeah.
shotguns, no rifles.
No.
Um, Especially my hunting rifle that I use. I got a Browning X bolt. I shoot 180 grain bullets out of it. That's just what I had set up for it, and it's got quite a kick.
Yeah, I'll bet for sure.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of a kick. So and you get it, go through, and even with archery, when we were shooting aluminum arrows, I went through one time and it's like, okay, I fletched all my arrows up, put the knock in, uh, cut them to the length I needed, and weighed them all, and I wrote the weight of each arrow
Uh-huh.
on each arrow. Then I took and went through the tips, and because I'd buy them in 100 bags, down the store, I don't buy
Yeah,
100 bags and package them in 12s. And in a 100 bag of 100 grain tips, you're going to run you 95 to 105.
right.
So I'd go through and I'd find them all there, and then I'd take the weight and I'd find and so the total weight of the arrow was exactly the same. And I'm even taking and filing the insert down
Uh,
to get that last little bit. So the whole dozen arrows was less than a half a grain variation between the highest and the low.
right.
Lot of work. I did it once.
Yeah.
I'll never do it again
No.
because it didn't make enough difference. But being an engineer, I was like, okay, if they all weigh exactly the same, they're all going to fly. They're all in the same drop and everything else. And it's weird. Even you putting broadheads on them, because I fletch with feathers, still do. I've been doing that since the 60s, and I'm not fond of vanes. Um, I don't hunt in the rain, so, well, normally I don't, but um, it's kind of weird. I can group them all in the X ring, put broadheads on them, and then of course they don't fly in the same spot. I shoot
Right.
Muzzy three blades, but I can get those attuned where I can set my sights and then hit X's. Well, every once you're going to run into arrow that will not tune. It will
Yeah.
not fly. No matter what you do, you can't get it to fly. And what I would do is I put the inserts in, and they'd have like it was a U-bar is what it was called. It was a cone-shaped washer. And you put a rubber
Mhm.
O-ring on in between them, and then you kind of tweak it. And by tweaking it a little tighter, a little looser, because the rubber O-ring holds it in place, then you could adjust with that arrow impacted because you have the wings up front and the wings in the back, and
Right.
there's a reaction between the air flowing over the front to the back. I actually interviewed one of the guys on the podcast that did a whole bunch of analysis on aeroflight and all the different things in there, and was talking about it. It's like, oh, okay, that's what I was doing. I said, tuning the air accruing across the broadhead and off of fletching, and some just would not, no matter what you did, you could not get them. It's like, okay, well, that's not a hunting arrow. That's just a target
No.
arrow.
Yeah. You don't need any frequent flyers in your quiver.
No. And I always set my, and then once I got them all done, I take a white marker and mark across between the broadhead and the shaft. So I always knew if it wasn't lined up correctly.
Uh,
Because it could easily, into putting it out of the quiver, can easily be, tweaked a little bit. And if I know
sure.
if I line those up, I'm right back to my perfect position.
Right.
And with aluminum arrows, you could always just heat the tip up because you use the hot melt, and you could adjust them a little bit. With
Yep. Just a
carbon
little
arrows,
twist.
the inserts are mounted in them permanently, so that's where you had to
Yeah.
go with the carbon arrows with that other setup to do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they say, well, just shoot mechanicals. Well, there's a couple of problems with mechanicals. They don't exactly fly like field tips.
Nope.
They can't because they're different.
Yep.
Are they close enough at hunting range? Probably.
Yeah.
The other thing is how much weight are you shooting? Do you have enough to efficiently open that broadhead up and take a bigger cut and get good pass throughs? How many
Yeah.
with mechanicals get pass throughs?
Right.
I don't know. I'm just, that's just something I'm thinking. Um, Now I shoot 70 pounds is when I was shooting. Of course, it's gonna be a while before I can even pull back 60-pound bow, but
Yeah.
um, I'm working on it.
It'll
Getting
take
there.
time.
Yeah, it'll take some time, and I did at the rehab. We started this week on one of the weight machines where I could put the weight on it and draw across my chest, and
Yeah.
I'm only at like 30 pounds, and of course it's a bit different than pushing and pulling, but
Right.
I was able to get 20 reps in at 30 pounds with. Of course, you got to do both sides.
Sure.
So that's kind of where I'm at on that. And so I need to get up a little bit higher.
Yeah.
before I even try it. And I may have to grab. I got an old left-handed recurve that I had when I had my store. They sent me. I was left-handed in a right-handed box, and I just never sent it back. And I don't have a string for it, so I may have to do that. And because that's only like 25 pounds, I
Oh
can
yeah.
practice shooting left-handed
Good
and
practice.
build up a little bit there. And my other recurve is a 40 pound. So that's going to be a while before I can pull that one. Maybe I can get
Yeah.
that up, start working on that, and um, because that's a little bit different, a little bit harder than combines. There's no let off, but
Right.
it's getting it past that let off at 60 pounds, and I don't want to change my hunting bow because it's set at 70, and if I change the weight on it, I got to redo all my pins, and right now my
Yeah.
pins are set up for my arrows.
Right. Well, the good thing about whitetails, you don't need a ton of weight. It comes down to it. My kids were with their mentor program, 10 or 11 years old, killing deer with 35 pounds.
Right.
So,
Well, and I got a couple of bows. I have one that I hunt with, and the other one is a target one, and I can crank it down to 60 because I don't really have pins set up for that. I can
right.
readjust those, and I do have a set of mechanicals that I could shoot, but um, I really don't want to.
Yeah.
At one time, I was because I didn't have time to set up my other one, so I bought some mechanicals that I was gonna you know, try because at 70 pounds, you got plenty of force to
Oh, for sure.
sacrifice.
Absolutely. Yep.
But it's when you shoot those lighter weight ones. I've seen uh, guys, they shoot the mechanicals and they go in at a couple inches because they're
Yeah.
shooting, 50, 60 pounds or something like that. It's like,
Right.
you got to have
You
a little
need
bit more
a
than
little
that.
more juice. Yeah. Yeah. Short draw and light poundage don't does not equal much penetration with a mechanical.
No, no. And that's what the nice fixed ones and the problem you run into with fixed blades, all these bows, they want to get faster, 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 faster. And the faster you try and send that fixed blade, the harder it is to control.
No, for sure.
So you have to have the arrow perfectly set up and perfect form, or that
Yeah.
broadhead is not going to fly anywhere close.
Nope.
And that's where you go into mechanicals because now you're at those speeds, you
Yeah.
don't have quite that effect, especially at most hunting ranges. Now, some guys will shoot out 50, 60 yards, 100 yards. Um, I don't know. There are guys that can do it.
I noticed my mechanicals um, are pretty good out to about 70, 80-ish, and then they start to drop a little extra drag. So I basically a yard or two off. So at roughly out to 100, I've had to adjust my sights probably 2 to 3 yards when it comes from broadhead to field tip. Now that's mechanicals. I'm still torn between the two. If I'm shooting fixed blades at that distance, it's a big difference.
Yeah. Well, I know PSC did a test one time to see, okay, straight fletch, offset, or helical,
Uh-huh.
and to see which one stabilized the arrow better. And an offset or helical stabilized it better than straight fletch because it was,
Yeah.
rotated, stabilized it.
Mm-hmm.
And then what they found was that the more it spin, the faster the circular velocity was, the quicker it would get to point at the speed of the arrow is less than the circular velocity, the arrow
Yeah.
dropped like a parachute.
Right.
So the faster you spin it, it gets out some part and then it starts diving really quick.
Yeah.
Now, on a carbon arrows, you can't get much of an offset. I use helical jig, but you really can't get much more than maybe a slight offset or your fletching don't fit on it because I use 4-inch
That's
feathers.
right. Yeah. Especially if you're
Um,
shooting micros.
yeah, if you're yeah, and I use just a regular shaft. I got PSE carbon
Mm-hmm.
arrows that I'm using. In fact, I probably never shoot anything but those because I have plenty of them left when I close the store.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I shoot the Competition Pro 300 spine. Now, PSE spining is a little different. 100 is weakest, 2, 3, and 400 is the stiffest.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
a lot of them, I think it's got to do with deflection. So the smaller the number, the less deflection, but PSC did them differently. Um, so, the 70 pound, 29 and a half inch arrow, 300 spine is what I use for that. And I don't know the other numbers because I don't deal with them too much.
Right.
Um, or you just look on the chart. So I gotta say, pick your arrow, look on the chart, make sure it
Yeah.
fits within the length of your arrow and the weight you're shooting. Whether you're shooting compounds or you're shooting recurves, because those are different.
Yeah.
Recurves you don't need as stiff a spine. Um, don't ever shoot wooden arrows out of a compound,
No, not unless you like
especially the new
splintering.
ones. Yeah, because it'll explode.
Yeah.
Uh, now there are some of the older compounds that are really slow and not much force in them that you
Right.
could probably get by with it. Um, I got a guy that used to come in and I'd make wooden bolts for him for his crossbow,
Uh-huh.
but it wasn't a modern crossbow. It was, basically a metal um, uh, prod for it, and so it worked okay for that because
Yeah.
we cut down arrows to fit, and they weren't very long. That worked okay, but the new ones, there's no way I'd shoot a wood arrow out of any of them.
No.
Now, if you want it to look like wood, um, Gold Tip has what they call the traditions, and
Yep.
that's what my son shoots. It looks like a wooden arrow, but it's carbon.
They do. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and I think they still make it, but that's what
They
my
do.
son shot.
Yep. They still have it.
But
I've
that way it
shot
looks
gold.
like wood, but it's not. It's just regular gold tip carbon, and
Yeah.
um, that was the main one I sold was PSE shafts, um, and then some gold tip. Um, that's the two main ones that I sold was those
Right.
two shafts.
Yeah. I shot
Sometimes I'd order in
your
some Beemans for a guy if they wanted something different. I'd order them in, but
right.
I stocked I stocked the PSEs and gold tips the only ones I actually stocked, and I never had any arrows all made up. I had 4 and 5 inch feathers, and I had 3, 4 inch vanes, and there you come in. There nothing's pre-made. I'd had to fletch them. It's like, okay, what colors you want?
Yeah.
Pick your colors,
Because whatever color
and
you had, they wouldn't want those. You'd have to make them anyways.
yeah. Well, if you go to like the Bass Pro Cabela's or any place that sells there, they're not cut. They come with inserts, but they're
Yeah.
picked whatever. One time you might have 2 orange and a white. One time 2 whites and an orange. You might have green and whatever. It's just whatever they happen to fletch with at the time.
Yeah.
And they'd run them until they run out of one color, and then they'd change colors and just keep going. And now everybody's arrows look the same. This way, you could customize what colors you want. And
Right.
then I used to have these wraps that you would get in, and they're long, they're quite long. I'd cut them in half, and I'd fletch it, and then I'd put it in front of the fletching. And
Right.
and what I liked to use was the ones that were reflective white. So if you take your light, it just glows like on the strips that you have on the roads. They
Right.
just glow. And
Yeah.
I've found arrows underneath evergreen trees that it's like, oh, there it is from 20 yards away. It's like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Better than the lighted knocks,
Yeah, for sure.
especially if you catch a branch with a lighted knock, the knock ends up disappearing and shuts off.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you can't see anything.
I did that once. The first shot with this lighted knock, I caught a branch that I didn't see, and the arrow went flying, and the knock went flying, and of course it shuts off the knock. You don't even bother looking for it. There's no way you're going to find it.
You're not gonna find it.
No, no, you're not going to find it. You might accidentally, but I'm not going to spend the time to look for a $5 knock. I'm not going to spend hours and
No.
hours and still and find it. I'll do that if
No.
I'm looking for a deer, but or an
Yeah.
arrow, but
Exactly.
not a knock.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty nice that way. And then there are all kinds of different wraps that you can put on them, and those are really nice to kind of decorate it up. They had a little bit of weight, but not enough to worry about. And I didn't
Yeah.
like
It's a
putting the
couple on,
fletching on
couple
it.
grains.
Yeah, I didn't like fletching on top of them because when you do have to refletch, you have to cut it
Yep.
off. You're going to get clear down the shaft. Now you have to put it back on in the same spot or cut them off. It's like I'm just going to cut them out, put them in front, so I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. If you tear the wrap, it's always hard to get that thing off and then redo everything.
Yeah. Well, and you can't take your fletching off without going through the wrap. It's just like one of those things you have to kind of get that perfect. But if you go down and catch it, now then your fletching's not going to stick. And
Right.
I had one guy that wanted like the bright orange, like the hunter orange wrap on there, the full length wrap, and
Uh-huh.
then two orange fletching, and then one other color, I forget what it was. And man, them were bright arrows. All that orange on that arrow,
For sure.
yeah, they stood out really good. And um, so you can kind of customize them. And traditional archers, they customize their arrows all the time. Put them on, spin them, and crest them with different combinations.
Resting marks. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could definitely tell whose it is.
Yeah, for sure. My dad used to have a bunch of those when he shot recurve years ago, just a little bit, but they all had different crestings and amount of lines and yeah, just all whatever pattern was your own thing.
Well, that way you knew whose arrow it was. And it was easy to tell because, if everybody had the same fletching, the same arrow, you shoot at a target. If you're both shooting at the same target, which like times will happen. It's like, well, which one's which? They all look the same.
Yeah.
And this way that was all different. I remember one time when my son was in scouts, my youngest in scouts, they had the Arrow of Light award or something, and I made up a bunch of arrows. I had some bludgeon tips, they're wooden ones, and I fletched them with the yellow and blue, and I forget which color knock I put on there. It's a blue knock, I think it was. Um, but then I took the shaft and I used a torch and I burnt the little pattern into it, so it just kind of look unique, and then and
Yeah.
then put the bludgeon on it because there's no tip on it because I didn't want anything sharp. You're dealing
Right.
with 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
So I made up a bunch of them for the scouts that one year that when he was in them and doing it, and it was kind of fun. Um, but there's all kinds of different things you can do. You want your colors, and that's why I never made anything up ahead of time. I always just made pick your colors. Uh, Same thing with
Yeah.
strings. I make strings, and I was when I had the store, I never stocked any strings because all the strings that I had when I got the store, I still have because they never
Yeah.
fit
Nobody
me.
wanted those. Yeah.
Yeah, those no, they don't fit, and then you'd have to find an old bow that one fit, and so I just made all my strings when somebody needed a string, and I said,
Yeah.
well, yeah, two colors. What two colors you want? Oh, black. No, I wouldn't make black strings unless their bow was set up where that was what really went best on them. It's like, oh, pick
Yeah.
two colors.
Yeah. Make
Yeah,
it bright.
yeah, we don't want to have a black string.
Yeah. I went through that misery for years making my own, and then my friend started a string company, so I've been using his ever since.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've got so much material left. I could probably make a new string every month for my bow, all my bows, and
Yeah.
not use up all the material. Not have to
Right.
get some serving material because I don't have enough for that because you go through a lot of the end loop
Sure.
serving
Oh,
and
yeah.
center serving material and but yeah, it's um I just like making them because then I had one guy come in one time. He called me up and want to know if I had a string for his bow or I could make one because he knew I made them. And I says, I don't. Can you come in tomorrow and we'll get set up? He says, no, I got a
Yeah.
tournament tomorrow. I need a new string now. And it's like, well, I can't do it while we're open because I can't, worry about, being interrupted halfway
Yeah.
through it. I said, show up just before we close. I think we close at 8. So he showed up, just before 8 or around on 8. And by 9 o'clock, he was leaving with his new string. And I
Yeah.
actually made two because it was a Darton, and the tracks on a Darton are skinnier.
Yeah.
And there's always a range of about 4 strands for, like might be 12 to 16 strands. Well, I always like to go in the middle, 14 or whatever it was. And I made it and I served the one end of it, tested it, and the track was too big.
Uh-huh.
Threw that one away, started over, and made a string, got them all done, hooked up, gone. He come in, I think 8 he was gone by 9. So it was
Uh-huh.
less than an hour. I actually made 1.5 strings, and then
Right.
he had to go to the range and shoot to get it all set up. And my strings, you don't need much. You don't have to, stretch them to set them
Yeah.
up.
A couple shots. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I do mine is I actually tie the strands together. So I'll tie the two colors together and then tie the end one. So now then as I
Mhm.
make it while it's there, I put a lot of pressure on it. So now I've stretched all that string out. So there's no loose strands in there. And so
Right.
that's all stretched out. And then I want to make it. So my strings don't really have any stretch in them after you shoot them. It only takes a few shots and they're not moving. And sometimes you got to shoot, 50, 100 shots before they quit moving.
Yeah.
Settle in. You know,
Yeah.
I've stuck mine in. It's like, you're going to take a couple of shots and start adjusting your sights because
Yeah.
it's gonna be off slightly because the string isn't exactly what it was before. Even
Right.
though I'll look at it and see what it says it's supposed to be if that information is there. Otherwise, I'll take the string and I'm trying to make it just a little bit shorter so it comes up just slightly shorter, and then that way it's there. But if the string is a quarter of an inch longer or shorter, it's going to change the speed. It can
Yep.
change your draw length. It change your max weight. So all that's in there. So you just basically just to shoot, set your 20, and if it's still on, then you're good to go.
Yeah. A lot of people bring their bows in, and it's been, I don't know, too long since they put a string on it. So you've ordered the factory specs, put it all together, and like this doesn't feel like anything. I mean, it shoots good, but it doesn't feel at all like, well, your other one just had stretch because they probably had factory junk strings on there, and
Yeah,
it just totally out of specs after 4 or 5 or 6 years. Like I said, they waited way too long to change them, and then you put it back to spec because maybe they bought the bow secondhand and didn't know the difference anyways. And then
right.
they like it, it shoots good, but it does feel different. And it's like, well, it's because this is back to spec now. It's where it should be.
Yeah. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand is those strings do stretch after time uh
Yeah.
and that's something I used to do too is you have a bow that somebody can't shoot because it won't crank down low enough in weight. So now
Mm-hmm.
then you can change the strings.
Yep.
If you change your string length by an inch, it changes your max draw weight by about 10 pounds on the older bows. I
Yeah.
don't know about a new one because I haven't tried it with newer ones. That was before you could had the option of just adjusting the draw length and on the
Right.
fly. Then it was, this module will go this far. This is for this draw length, and the only way to change it is to change the strings. And sometimes that's all they do for the different weights is
Right.
is is changing the string.
Yep.
Sometimes cables and or the cams and strings and cables change on them. But I've done that before. I know when my daughter was setting hers up, she couldn't pull the weight,
Right.
and I could get I was able to get some 50-pound limbs for the bow because it come with like 60 or 70. So I was able to get some 50-pound limbs, and she still couldn't pull it. You know, so then I had to change the strings and cables, and so I was able to get down to what she could pull, and
Right.
you could do that. It's not going to have the performance if you didn't do that, but if you can't shoot it, you can't shoot it.
Yeah. It definitely can manipulate them a lot if you know exactly what to do to get them to do that. Like I don't just recommend anybody do start playing around, but
No,
somebody that knows how to do it, you can definitely manipulate them a little bit.
yeah, and that's if you don't know what you're doing, don't just order a shorter string or a longer string. If you don't know what you're
Yeah.
doing, because you're going to spend that money and it's not going to give you what you want. That's when you need to go to
No.
somebody that knows what's going on and has done it before. And like I make a string, and if it don't work out, I just make another one. It's
Right.
I'm going to charge you for the string, and if it don't work out, then we'll just make another one.
Yeah. Exactly.
My material. If you buy a roll of string material, you make one string, and you got the roll paid for.
Yeah.
So the rest is all free.
Yeah. Exactly.
As far as that. But you got your end loop stuff, and you can make several bows out of the small spools of the end loop and center serving. You can do quite a few of those. So by the time you buy, the string and the end loop and center serving stuff, you make one string and you got it paid for.
Yeah. For sure. Then if you're buying quarter-pound spools or full spools, 1 pound spools, whatever they are, and then you can get a lot of strings out of those big ones.
Yeah, I use the 1 pound ones. I don't or buy the string material in the small ones. I always bought them in the bigger ones, and
Yeah, I
there's
just
so
for
many different
individual
colors.
use. Yeah, individual use. I would just get the little ones from BCY and use
That
those. But I wasn't making tons of strings, just enough for myself, maybe one or two buddies.
Yeah, and you don't need all the different colors. I got lots of colors. There's like 15, 20 different colors. And
Yeah.
when I was getting ready to make a string for my one bow, and I don't know how you can see it, that I tried,
Uh-huh.
okay, this is a copper and blue. I made another one that is chartreuse, a bright
Yep.
pink and a bright green.
Yeah.
Uh, this one here, oh, it kind of got untwisted here, but if I twist it back up, mountain berry and copper or bronze, something like that. And this one I made about three different colors.
Yep.
Uh, Dark brown, mountain berry, and copper. There's all kinds of different colors, and that's nice about it is you can make all those different ones, and I got material to use for recurve. So if I want to do that, because you put a fast light on a recurve and it's not
Yeah.
reinforced for it, you're going to break the tips off. They're not
Okay.
designed for it. So
Right.
that's why you can't use the fast flight. I use the 8125 by BCY. And
Hmm.
there's the new ones, the 450X is a newer one that a lot of them are using. Um, I'm not going to switch to that because I already got so much 8125 and the
Yeah, and that's a good
B500.
material too. Yeah, that's a good material to use. I think mine's all 452X, I believe, is what my string maker uses.
Yeah. Well, that's what a lot of new ones are. The 8125 is a very limited stretch to start with.
Right.
And it's I found it's a good string and I have it, so I'm not going to switch. Now, if I was a string maker, I might look at having other options to do different ones, but I think it's, you know, hey, a good quality of string material, doesn't matter what you're using.
Exactly. Yeah. I just don't want it to move. I don't care what color it is. I always told the um, 60X, whoever was making my strings, to get creative, make whatever color you want, but just make it good.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, want to try
I
a
don't want
color?
moving.
You want to try a color that nobody ever ordered and you think it'll look nice? Go ahead and make it. Just make it good.
Yeah. Well, and that's the BCY is kind of the standard for string material. I know
Yeah.
Brownell they used to have good material, but I kind of heard that they're not near the quality they used to be.
Yeah. I don't hear much about them anymore. Mostly BCY stuff.
Yeah, and that's I got some left from different ones just because it's left from when I bought the store and all
Sure.
the stuff. But I don't use those. I just stay with the other. And
Yeah.
nice about customize your bow is the key. Make it your own personality.
Yeah. Yeah. I like bright strings. I like the bright colors, except around the peep side. I'll blacken them out, but I don't want any glare from the sun.
Yeah. Well, and then too around your peep, you can always take and use the end loop in black and serve
Yeah.
around there, so you don't have it.
Yeah.
Um, Helps keep the peep from moving too. But
Right. I definitely like tied in. Some of these new ways are, to me, not as secure. I like the old way where I used one piece up and down the whole, up the down at the bottom, and then wrap it around the one side, up around the peep, lock it all in, and then tie it off at the top. I've stayed old school with that. Might use a
yeah,
little extra material, but or
that
serving, but it's tight. It's not coming out. It's not moving.
that material is pretty cheap. Now I tie a
Yeah.
knot above and below it. I don't tie the peep in itself. I've never had one come out. Now, if you
Right.
dry fire, it might be a little different story.
Yeah.
The
That's
nice
for
thing
sure.
about
Yeah.
that is you can move that knot up and down slightly, and it'll make that peep turn a little
Yep.
bit.
Right.
Yeah, and
It's
one of
not
my
too bad.
bows.
I had to adjust mine. Yes, I had to adjust mine yesterday a little bit. I'm getting a new bow set up, and I just take a half hitch or piece of paracord and can slide that knot down even with it all tied together because you're just moving it a micro, very
Right.
little. If I have to move it that far, I'll undo it and tie it and redo the whole thing.
Yeah.
couple of minutes.
Well, the same thing with your loops. Um, you know, those you can tweak a little bit by rotating them a little bit.
Yep.
If your peep's not
Right.
lining up, you can take the knot that loop instead of being straight back, you can turn it so it's off the side a little bit. So as you draw back, when you hook it up, it pulls it a little bit, straightens it up.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of little tricks that you can do to learn how to get them to adjust. You can take on your peep or splits it in half, and you can take and move one strand from one side to the other side, which will put
Yep. Done that before
which
too.
will make a move and
Yeah. Sometimes that half a twist in a string is just too much. And then
right.
you're half, then you're a twist the wrong side, the wrong way. So yeah, between the loop and now they have like, what are those little things you stick in the string, little metal string dividers, and you just move it up and down, and it helps adjust the rotation too a little bit.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I can't remember what they're called, but I've seen those now too.
Well, they've got those string separators you can put in to separate your string, like for putting them in. I never liked using those. I've got one. I never like using them because as you're forcing that through that string with all that pressure on it, you could
Yeah,
easily split one of the strands itself instead of going in
yeah,
between them. So I
yep,
always like to, put it in press, pull them apart, uh,
yeah,
because if you put that in there and you split one of the strands, now then it's weak and you can actually break one of the
yeah.
strands
It's
with it.
gonna break probably.
Yeah.
That's not good.
So yeah. And that's what it's, if you ever see your peep, all of a sudden the strands go straight on one side. Yeah, that's because you got broken strands in there.
Yeah, there's a broken strand. You better get a new string.
Yep. Yeah, get a new string. Well, we've been going about an hour and a half now, so um
Time flies.
yeah, it does. What would you like to leave our audience with a message? Um, what are your final thoughts?
Well, this year for me is a new year in the competition realm. I get to move up a class. I'm out of the young senior pro division where guys can see and I can't. And for me, I get to move into the senior pro division. So I kind of like that. I'm excited about changing classes and shooting with a guy. A lot of guys I haven't shot with for 10 or 20 years because they moved up after, before I got to that age. Um, I'm just kind of excited about that change. And it was just been a trying year for me, lots of things happening. And archery was on, it's never out of my mind, but it wasn't a, primary thing for me. So I'm just kind of excited about a new beginning, kind of per se, even after 20 years, 30 years, how can something be new? But it's just a whole new year for me and moving up in class wise and uh, just changing companies. Lots of good things for me in that aspect. So I'm kind of excited to see. Hopefully, it all works out and it's a good year. And as long as I'm able to shoot a bow and compete in archery, it's always a good year. But looking forward to this next season in the 3D competitions.
That's good.
So hopefully,
Um, your friend you said has a string company. What was the name of their string company?
60X, a friend of mine that we've shot since
Okay.
high school together. And Brad and Don have run that company for years and always been really good for me, dragging me along, helping me out when I need a set of strings. I get them in a couple of days and just a really good company, good quality stuff. Number one is their quality and how they treat people is even better. So,
Well, and I'll leave a link to them in the description so it makes it easier if you're interested in a string and get a hold of them. So if you want to get a hold of them, do they have a website or
yeah, just
what's
60X custom strings.
okay.
And, a lot of other companies I've been with for years. 60X is one gold tip bee stingers. I've been shooting true ball releases and sights for years. Just recently switched to elite bows from many, many years with Hoyt, but things change. Uh, Even not archery related, but hunting companies. Cafaro, a friend of mine, is an owner of Cafaro. They've always helped me out. You know, been a good supportive company. So lots of good people in industry that even help little guys out like me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll leave a link to all those places in the description so they can find them and
Okay.
um just remind us if you're listening this far, thanks for listening or watching. I remember
Yep.
you can catch the podcast on Spotify and audible.com. You can catch it out there. That's free out there, as well as on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix Yourself. But probably the best place to go is on Arch Talk 101 Facebook group, because it's posted in there. It generally right away it goes into there. And there's also a lot of other information out there. So that's where you can catch us, and we'll definitely answer any questions you have. If you have any questions, just hit us up. If you're looking for any equipment, check out the description. You'll see what you use and recommend,
Yep.
and that's always a good thing. It's like, what do you recommend it and why? And there's a lot of stuff on here that's good, and just try it. Help out these new
And I'm
guys.
always interested to help people out. If anybody has questions, always too. I'm on Instagram and Facebook too, and I've helped. I get questions once in a while. I'm not your primary source, but I've actually know some folks and get some info out. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, there's always another answer somewhere else.
Yeah, there is. That's what there's always somebody who has a different opinion, and you're gonna find one that you like and stay with it.
Yeah, and sometimes you just need that little extra idea to find the golden answer.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for being on the show. I'm sure we'll
I
talk
appreciate
later.
it.
And it's been a lot of fun. And my name is Rory Canterbury. I've been your host here on Arch Talk 101, and we'll definitely catch you on the next one. We have more interviews coming up, and watch for the tree stand safety one coming out. Hopefully, I can get that out here real soon. But I'm working on them as fast as I can get them done. So we'll see you on the next one. Make sure you stay tuned, and we'll catch you later.
Thanks, Roy.